Yes. Greetings, everyone. My name is Kwame Gonza, as you are seeing on the screen. Today, we have come to give an African perspective. As you know, this is Africa Reimagined. We have come to give an African perspective to the situation in Ukraine. As you are seeing, we are having a war where Russia, of course, carried out, and they called it a military operation, special military operation. And others, they called it an invasion, of course, especially from the West. They called it an invasion. And of course, Russia has given its own reasons for invading Ukraine or carrying out its special military operation, which can be justified, of course. And the West also is justifying why Ukraine should be able to do whatever it wants with its territory. Including allowing coup d'etats to be carried out on the Ukrainian territory. So, but if we want to look at the event that happened over the weekend on Saturday, you all remember that Russia was sort of having a situation where the Wagner group wanted to overthrow the government in Ukraine. I mean, the government in Russia, sorry. The Wagner group wanted to march on Moscow, which is the capital of Russia. And there was rumors that they were going to overthrow the government in Russia. So what we want to look at today as Africans is what should we get out of this? And of course, if you are watching, you can put your comments down. We want to discuss this at length. I want to give you my own perspective from a Pan-Africanist and someone also who has studied imperialism for the last 10 years. I'm a Pan-Africanist who has studied Pan-Africanism itself for the last 10 years, have been reading Pan-Africanism, but I've also been reading imperialism, the workings of imperialism, because you cannot study Pan-Africanism without studying imperialism, because the greatest enemy for Pan-Africanism or the African people is imperialism. And that shows you actually for the last 600 years, and in this case, to be precise, it has been European imperialism. So I have been studying Pan-Africanism for the last 10 years, hand in hand with the understanding of imperialism. And from my view, it is imperialism which has stood in the way for Africa to be able to come out of the chaos that it has been in for the last 600 years, ever since the arrival of Europeans on the West African coast, and then all the way to the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa, where they went actually and even lodged up to this day, that they are still lodging there. So they came and attacked Rostov. They took over the military base, the major military base in Rostov, which is in Russia. They call it a military district. The Wagner came with about 25,000 military men, military officers, and of course the leader is called Prozgin. This is the leader who has been a very good friend of Putin for a long time. And why I want to speak about it is because as Africans, we have to pay close attention to these events. Big up to my sister, Mallet of Connect Africa. I'm attached to Connect Africa, even though I have my own channel here. I'm also attached to Connect Africa. Mallet, you're doing a very good job. Where we every week we analyze these events and how they affect especially Africa. So if you are an African, you have to pay close attention to what is going on across the globe. Why? because in the year 1884, 1885, we were colonized because we were not paying attention to what was going on across the globe. And they came and divided our continent because we were not paying attention. We didn't know actually what was going on across the globe. So if we have that opportunity today in the global, village, we are living in the global village right now. So it is important right now that we pay attention to what is going on across the globe, because it will affect us in one way or another. So that is very important. So that is the very reason why we have to talk about events like this and look at it from a Pan-African perspective. What could be the result of, for example, if they overthrow President Putin from the presidency, from Russia? If they overthrow his government, what could be the consequences for that, for us as Africans? And of course, we have Wagner Group in Africa already. We have it in Mali. I think I hear it is there even in Burkina Faso and Central African Republic. So what could be the consequences after that? Because you remember very well that the United States attempted to pass a bill called HR 7311, which was called a bill for countering Russia maligning activities in Africa. So that bill actually was about Africa, and in it was that they want to monitor all African countries and African administrative officers or political officers or politicians who have a favorable outlook towards Russia and they favor Russia. Or in essence, they wanted to monitor those African countries which want to work with Russia. So this is the very reason why it is important for us as Africans to do our own analysis and sit on the side and understand how these events are going to affect us. And probably we could make a contribution, or we could even advise our leaders, because I don't know who's out there watching. You could be a big person even in the government, that you have the closeness with a certain president or certain presidents across the African continent, that we could come together and find a way of advising our leaders on how to move about these events. When you look at our leaders, our African leaders, it is not that they know everything. They don't know everything. So you find that in many cases, the people, us who are sitting on the side, actually know much more than our leaders regarding, for example, geopolitics, regarding, for example, industrial policy. If we are supposed to put up an industrial policy, you find that there is people who are experts on economics. We have these experts, many of them across the African continent. Many people who know about economics, but because these people are not being listened to, and that is why you see Africa finds itself in the quagmire or in the problems in which it is today. Okay, so Wagner is present on the African continent. That one we are not going to deny it. Wagner is very much present on the African continent. So how should we look at it? Or let me say, how let me first put this microphone real quick here so that they can sit in one position. I don't want disturbance. All right, I think we are good now. So how should we as Africans look at this situation? How should we look at this situation? Actually, when this situation happened, I wrote an article which I want to share with you. You will forgive me for the shaking. There will be a little bit of shaking because I'm touching the table, and my table is not very stable. I wrote an article in which I shared my thoughts on this rebellion which happened in Russia. And this article was published in on a website called africainterest.org. The article is actually talking about the Wagner rebellion. And in it, what I'm saying is this. If you want to read it, you can go to a website called africainterest.org. africainterest.org. Maybe I should put that down for you. africainterest.org. africainterest.org. All right. africainterest.org. So I'm just trying to find here where I can put it for you. That website is called africainterest.org. So the website is called africainterest.org. africainterest.org. All right. Okay. So the website is called africainterest.org. And in this, my argument is this. You know, you can go on there and read all Africa news which have to do with Africa. So in the article, I'm arguing that the reason we are having this rebellion of the Wagner group is because the European powers and the Anglo-Saxons, or you would call them the white people, the reason they are coming out this way is because they are losing on the battlefront. You know, you remember that if you listen to people like John Mashima, who is a very reasonable man, who has written extensively. Actually, he predicted this way back and even gave a speech which went viral after Russia attacked Ukraine. He predicted that the way the West is moving and poking Russia, this war is likely this provocation of Russia is likely not to end well, is likely to go on with the hammering of Ukraine by Russia. So he warned on this. So when you listen to him, he said that looking at what is happening in Ukraine, it is likely that the loss that is happening in Ukraine, the Ukrainian side is losing this battle. Okay? The loss that is happening is that they are losing their soldiers in a ratio of 1 to 9. Every one soldier of Russia, every one Russian soldier that is dying, you know, goes with the death of 9, Ukrainian soldiers. So that could be a very, very big loss. And also, other analysts have predicted that this war, in what Ukraine called a counter-offensive, that is, it is going to carry out. The counter-offensive is not going well. That is one thing. So I argue that after failing to win this war in all kind of ways which they expected to, especially on the economic front, if you remember that that when the war started, they imposed certain economic sanctions onto Russia, and those sanctions were supposed to weaken the Russian economy, but they were not able to weaken the Russian economy. So when they fail in the economic sanctions, and of course we have seen these things instead, which are the sanctions affecting majorly the Western world. You have seen the economy of Germany is the one actually which is shrinking. It has shrunk by I think by 0.3%. Consecutively, it has been shrinking for the last 2 quarters. That is the Germany economy. It has not been growing, it has been shrinking. You know, in the last quarter of 2022, the German economy shrunk. And the first quarter of 2023, the German economy again shrunk. Why? It's because it is no more receiving the cheap gas, which is the energy, cheap energy from Russia that is supposed to run their industry. So various industries are shutting down. So the economic sanctions that were supposed to affect Russia by cutting off the supply of oil and gas to Europe, because Europe is paying money to Russia, they are now instead affecting Europe, because Europe used to get cheaper gas and cheaper energy from Russia. Now, what is happening is that Europe now is buying energy, you know, more expensive. The energy is more expensive right now because Russia was giving them subsidized energy. Now they are buying the energy from the United States and other countries at 4 times the price they were buying it from Russia. And especially from the United States. United States, actually, it is even becoming more rich. It is sort of bullying. I remember there is even an article which was published by the European Union in which they are saying that we are being balkanized. We are being colonized by the United States, because the United States bullied them into stopping taking Russia's energy, to the extent that even they blew up the pipelines, you know, the Nord Stream 2. They blew up the pipelines to stop the flow of gas to Europe. When the United States bullied them into this, then it got a chance to sell them the gas from the United States, because now the United States now is also an energy producer, is a net energy producer right now, which is competing on the global stage. So it sold the United States now is selling its energy to Europe, but at 4 times the price which Russia was selling that energy. So that means production in Europe becomes unsustainable. Industrial production becomes unsustainable because the prices have increased. Now you cannot compete on the global stage. You cannot compete now with countries like India and China, which are taking cheaper energy from Russia, because when they closed off and Russia closed off and stopped supplying them because of the sanctions they themselves have applied on Russia, Russia just directed that energy to Russia, and actually the energy has been flowing to India and China in record numbers. So all the energy that was going to Europe has now been directed to India and China. And actually what is happening with India also is that India now is even repackaging that energy and selling it to Europe at a higher price and making profit off it. So this is This is what is laughable about this situation, that India is able to make a profit of the energy which it is selling, which is it is selling to Europe. It is making a profit. So in the whole, you find that it is Europe which is losing. So this war, when you look at it carefully, Europe and the Europeans and the United States are losing the war. This is my argument. My argument is that they are losing the war on the battlefront because Ukraine is losing its soldiers with a ratio of 1:9 in favor of Russia. Russia, for every one Russian soldier who's dying, 9 Ukrainian soldiers are dying. And when you go on the economic front, Russia had already prepared this. Okay, so Russia is playing its chess pieces extremely well. It is very smart. It is very calculated. The way in which Russia is playing this game is absolutely calculated. In the lead up to the war, Russia was packing up and storing up on oil. On gold. It was buying a lot of gold and preparing itself. And now the energy, when it has been cut off, the funding or the money that is supposed to come from Europe, because of selling that energy has been now transferred to China and India, and it is continuing on to the process. So my argument is that when the West saw that it is losing on both sides, it decided to go the side of inciting violence or inciting division or a breakage in the battle, soldiers or, the fighters or the army of Russia. So this could be a calculated move. And of course, other people have other arguments. I do not discount that. Okay, people may have other arguments that it is a strategic move. Other people are saying it is a strategic move that Russia is making to pass via the side of Belarus. Because if you pass through Belarus, then that means you can enter Kiev easily. Okay, that is a tactical move which they say that it is possible that Russia is making, that they are just playing a game. But my argument also is that it is possible that Prozygin, who is the leader of Wagner, the owner of Wagner, is possible that he may have been approached by the United States and the Europeans to the point that they would want to buy him out, that he should turn against Russia. Because this could be in the interest, of course, of the United States. It could very much be in the interest of the United States. Because of what I said, that it could be losing on the battlefront, there's a lot of loss that is happening. Russia has just decimated, Ukraine tremendously. If you look at the infrastructure, almost has been destroyed, and they are not seeing an end, this war ending very well for them. So now, if you can enter into Russia and disorganize the Russian army, of course you could win, and you try to overthrow the government in Moscow, then that could be a victory. And this is not out of thin air, because people like Hillary Clinton have talked about this. Even Biden himself has talked about this, the need of overthrowing President Putin. So this argument could hold water, very, very well. Now, this, on the other side, it would affect other areas. It would affect other areas of the world, and especially Africa, because I say that we have Wagner already in the African continent. If President Putin, God forbid, in this article when I was writing, actually I said that God forbid, if President Putin was overthrown from power, it would be a disaster, not only for Africa, but it would be a disaster for China and the whole world. Because if you look at the world, how it is being shaped, we have analyzed these things extensively on our channel, Connect Africa, with my sister Marlet. If you look at the world and how it is going, everyone has been talking about this, that the world now is being shaped there's a new world order which is emerging, or what everyone has been calling the multipolar world, which is very good for everyone. The multipolar world is very good for everyone. Why? Because the West has been bullying everyone. Of course, you can talk of the IMF, you can talk of NATO. They have been bullying everyone, just bombing countries, destroying countries. So if a multipolar world emerges, that means everyone almost has equal power, or not necessarily equal power, but there could be a relatively just world which favors everyone, where everyone's voice is listened to, regardless of how small a nation is. But if people like Putin are overthrown from power, you just know that that is a loss for the multipolar world that is being shaped right now. And Africa would suffer the most. And I will show you how Africa would suffer the most. Because if they defeated Russia, the road would lead them to China. Because you have seen them provoking China. They have been provoking China tremendously. You know, you remember Donald Trump, he started his economic sanctions on China, the economic war on China. And Biden also has extended that with the banning of cheap, semiconductors from being sent to China and all that. They have just extended this war. So the target of the United States is, and its allies, of course. And of course, this does not mean that it's going to be successful, but the target is for them to go and destroy Russia. Why? Because Russia, when you look at it, it is opposing this order. It is opposing the colonial order which they created since 1945. In 1945, they created that system whereby the colonial powers, who were the Europeans, when they were weakened, they gave their power, they transferred their power to the United States, because all of them are white, all of them are Anglo-Saxon. So they saw it necessary to give their power at least to an Anglo-Saxon who is on their side, so that they can continue that process of colonization and feeding on others' resources, because the United States and Europe were built up by other people's resources, not their own working. It's not because they are hardworking. Those people, it's not because they are hardworking. It's because they are using others' resources, other nations' resources to sustain themselves. So Russia opposes that order. Now, the rise of China also opposes that order. Now, when these two come together, China and Russia, they empower the other global southern countries. As you have seen, that China has been helping Africa build up infrastructure. When you talk of the road, the Belt and Road Initiative, China is empowering countries like Iran, is empowering countries like Brazil, all countries in South America. And the United States and Europe, they feel that you are taking away their source, or sort of like their garden, where they exploit resources to sustain themselves, to build their countries, to make their countries, to sustain their wealth in their countries. So they see this as a threat. So anyone who comes up with systems that are, directed towards challenging that system, whether it is the creation of a new currency. You remember that President, Muammar Gaddafi, when he was trying to create a new currency, he was challenged. He was challenged and killed, of course, because they saw him as someone who's challenging the system that they had built up. Now, when you go and look at people like, for example, Saddam Hussein, also the reason he was killed is because he was challenging the United States order, whereby he was trying to sell the oil in euros, the Iraqi oil in euros instead of the United States dollar. So the United States dollar was being challenged during that period. So anyone who tries to challenge the United States and and its being and its supremacy on the global stage becomes a threat to the United States. And if you want to understand this very well, you can go out there and look at the hearing. There's a Congress hearing actually on maintaining the supremacy of the dollar. Okay, there's a Congress hearing which is for maintaining. They had Congress had a hearing recently. I think it was last month, and that Congress, that hearing was held, and the argument was that how do we maintain the supremacy of the dollar? So I'm trying to find that hearing where everyone can be able to look at it. So it is very important. These things, when people have been talking about them for a long time, others have been saying, oh, it is conspiracy theory, it is conspiracy theory. But when you challenge the United States dollar, you become an enemy of the United States. When you say anything or you carry out any actions that are, directed towards, reducing the strength of the United States dollar, then you are looked at as an enemy of the United States and you have to be removed. So whether it means killing 1 million people like what happened in Iraq, you will be decimated. Now the challenge they are facing today is that China is so powerful. It's not like a weak country like how you see Libya, which they would go and easily bomb. China is more powerful compared to Iraq. And when you add them together with Iran, when you add China and Russia together, and who are working actually right now with Iran, then that becomes a much more challenging and formidable, enemy who is very difficult for them to challenge. So what we are seeing is that China and Russia have empowered the global South, and that is South America and Africa. How have they empowered Africa? Look at Africa. China, of course, has built infrastructure and various infrastructure. Now, when you look at countries like Mali and Burkina Faso, I mentioned that Wagner is there. That is how Russia is supporting over there. And Russia, on top of that, it went to Syria and supported the Syrian government. The United States wanted to overthrow the Syrian government. So Russia came in and supported the Syrian government. You see? So this support, it becomes a threat to the United States. And now they see the same Russia in Africa, again supporting countries like Mali, Central African Republic, Burkina Faso. So this becomes a very dangerous act. It is becoming an existential threat to the United States. So they see that the removal of Russia by any means necessary has to be achieved. And then when you finish that, you remove another obstacle, another person who you are seeing as an obstacle, who is China. So that war you are seeing is leading to China, actually, even though they are fighting it in Ukraine, whereby they are pouring in all types of weapons, every type of weapon which you see, every type of money you see, because for them, this is, because for them, this war is an existential threat, is a matter of life and death for them. So that is where I would not discount out the fact that this agitation that we are seeing in Russia, it has the hand of the CIA and the United States in it and the Europeans in it. They know about it very well. But the mistake which Prigozhin did is that he underestimated, I think, the power of Russia. I don't know whether he understands what he's doing, but maybe they promised him help, that if he reaches somewhere, if he captures Moscow, maybe the United States would come and help him to be able to overthrow, President Putin. But when he was coming, when you look at it, when he was coming and he has captured Rostov, which is the military district of Russia, with his 25,000 military people. And of course, he might have taken some money. That is my outlook, because I believe other people have their outlook. I believe that he might have been told that when you are coming with your 25,000, from if you look at from a call, because he had a conversation with the president of Belarus, I think he's called Lukashenko, So he gave him a call and he told him that he has to halt his move. Now, I think that the reasons he might have given him is that you cannot stand up against the Russian military with your 25,000 Wagner, men. You cannot stand up against the Russian military. And on top of that, you see that the Chechnya army, which is Chechnya is sort of like a state within a state in Russia, had already also set off to come and meet Wagner so that they can square it up and start fighting up. So you can see that the Wagner group was going to face almost 3 armies: the Chechnya army, the Russian army, and the Belarusian army. So it is likely that the Belarusian president told Prigozhin, who is the leader of Wagner, that if you try it, you are going to be crushed terribly by 3 armies, almost armies which belong to 3 countries, by armies of 3 countries. This is how far you are going to be crushed. So you should not dare try it. You are just going to cause the slaughter of 25,000 men, and all of them are going to die because you are joking with 3 armies. And Russia in itself is a very deadly, army. If you look at what it is already doing in Ukraine, and even the United States knows this. That is why the United States and Europe, they have not engaged. And just to give you a little history, Russia, when it was the Soviet Union, has ever defeated Napoleon. Napoleon came to invade, the Soviet Union. He was defeated, and he went back. And actually, that is what led to his downfall after his defeat, in Russia. When you go to Hitler, also he tried to attack, the Soviet Union, and he was crushed and he was defeated also. So, and the Russian people have not lost that determination in any way. In any way, they have not lost that determination. So I think that Prigozhin with 25,000 men as an army, I think it was absolutely stupid even for him to try it, regardless of how much help he was promised by the United States or the Europeans and all that. Now, I want to come to what would be the possible consequences of if President Putin was overthrown in Russia. Like I mentioned, they would proceed to, of course, to China. They would, if they defeated China, God forbid, if they defeated Russia and they defeated China, the Americans and the Europeans, it would be very bad for Africans. Why? Because Africa is the most disorganized place. Maybe the other place which you can talk of is Latin America, but Africa is the most disorganized place on this planet. The leaders have refused to work together. Even though we have all these advantages, there's disadvantages. There's disadvantages which I talk about every day. We have one of the biggest populations on the planet. If you look at the population which we have, 1.4 billion people, and the diaspora around 300 million people. That is around 1.7 billion people. So when you look at Africa, it has the biggest population on the planet, but we are not using it. We have the resources. Those ones I don't even need to talk about them. The GDP of Africa in itself is around $3.5 trillion. So if you put it together, and the fourth advantage for Africa is the location. If you look at Africa's location, Africa is in the middle of the world. So if you talked about putting up industries on the African continent, and those industries, you are going to manufacture products for all the world, Africa would be able to make products actually much more cheaper than how you see China or the United States or Europe, because you would manufacture products depending on where you are taking them. Like, for example, you would manufacture products in the East African region, products which you want to export to, for example, Asia, China and India. You would manufacture products like in the southern part. If you want to transport those products, you want to export those products to Australia, you would manufacture products in the western part, those products which you want to export to the Americas, to North America and South America. And then, of course, in the north and central, you would manufacture products which you want to export to Europe. So that is how advantageous Africa is. But these advantages are not being used as Africans. So Africa is the most disorganized place on the planet right now. So if a war broke out and in Russia, and the Russian president was defeated, and then they went and defeated China also, the biggest loser would be Africa, actually, and Latin America. The weak countries of the world, they would be the biggest losers. Why? Because the United States right now is facing huge economic difficulties. Germany and Europe, all of it, they are facing huge economic difficulties. If you look at France, for example, France people have been demonstrating on the streets since 2020, the Yellow Jackets. Even right now, people are still demonstrating on the streets in France. Why? Because of economic problems. Even the French economy has been, the French economy has been also depreciating. If you look at the figures from 2020, even after the COVID, there's a period when the French economy actually depreciated, shrunk by almost 6% during the COVID period. So Europe and the United States are facing tremendous economic problems. Europe and the United States are facing tremendous economic problems. Now, these economic problems, if they face them, where do you think they would want to get relief and the resources to reconstruct their countries? Of course, the weak countries. They will not go to China. They will not go to India, because India is already overpopulated. They will go to spaces where those resources are and where people are disorganized. If you listen very carefully to President George W. Bush, in one of his speeches, he said that the United States depends on resources from disorganized and poor countries and countries which are being ravaged by war. Those are the resources on which the United States depend. So let me just rephrase it or paraphrase it. He said that the United States depends on resources from war-torn countries of the world. So if they see that there's disorganization in Africa, they just see that is an opportunity for them, to thrive. These are the resources which they will depend on. You get it? So this is why it would be a disaster if Russia and China lost a war to the Western world. It would be a disaster. And my argument actually can be backed by an article which came out this morning. General Petraeus warned the mercenary Prigozhin to avoid open windows in Belarus, because Prigozhin went to Belarus after the negotiations with the Belarusian president, where he was told that he should not continue to march on Moscow for the various reasons which I've already mentioned. He was given asylum, or he went in exile in Belarus. That is where he went. Okay, so this morning the article came out, this article which you are seeing on the screen. General David Petraeus, who is a murderous, United States military man who murdered a lot of people in Iraq and Afghanistan, actually, and he also worked for the CIA. He warned Prigozhin that where he has gone in Belarus, he should avoid open windows, because he will be taken out by Putin's men, because Putin warned that he doesn't take very kindly. There's a speech which has been going viral online where Putin said that he forgives, but he does not forgive betrayal. So he was asked by an interviewer that, President Putin, do you ever forgive anyone? He said that yes, he forgives, but he never forgives anyone who betrays. So he said he doesn't forgive everything. He forgives, but he doesn't forgive everything. So they asked him, whom do you not forgive? And he said that betrayal. If you betray me, I don't forgive you. So this is what he said. And if you look at the speech which President Putin gave on Saturday, after they had said that the Wagner army, the Wagner group is marching onto Moscow, he gave a very strong speech in which he said that this is betrayal, and those people will be punished. So it is unlikely, even though that President Putin mentioned that the charges against the Wagner boss and those who participated have been forgiven, it is unlikely that he has forgiven them. So my argument, of course, I want other people to come up with their own argument, but I have written my own and I've published. So we will see which argument, of course, can stand the test of time. But my argument is that President Putin is likely that he is luring, it's likely that President Putin is luring Prigozhin into a safe space and taking his time where he will get him. He will get him and punish him. This is what I'm seeing from my analysis and from the information which I have got so far. I'm giving this a Pan-African analysis and perspective. I'm giving it to you from a Pan-African perspective because I've told you that I've been in Pan-Africanism for the last 10 years, and I've been studying imperialism, and I've been studying the United States and European powers and their colonialism for the last 10 years as a Pan-Africanist. So I'm giving you from that point of view. And of course, I can be wrong. Everyone can be wrong. But this is what I'm seeing. And that is why it was important for me to come out and do this analysis. And of course, I've already published an article which I've said. You can find it on africainterest.org, that article, and you check it out for yourself. That is a website where I normally publish my writings, especially which are connected to Pan-Africanism, geopolitical events, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for those of you who are watching. I'm really glad that you are watching. I thank you very much. I appreciate you for watching. Yes, so so this is my view on the whole situation, how I'm seeing what is going on the global stage in regards to to the Ukraine war. Thank you, my sister Mallet. So I want to call upon all those ones who are watching. Come and subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to our channel, Connect Africa, where we do a weekly analysis twice a week. We do that with my sister Mallet, and we are carrying out a lot of other activities, especially those which are related to Africa. So when you are watching, subscribe to Connect Africa, subscribe to Africa Reimagined. These are channels where we do great work related to Africa. We are not out there, looking for clickbaits and all that stuff, but you can come and support us. We ask you to come and support us in all ways in which you can. So I want to thank you for today. That has been it for today for my analysis. I didn't want this day to go without me doing an analysis on what is going on in Ukraine and the Russian situation. We have already done numerous analysis on this, and we looked at this extensively. Of course, I did a presentation of about almost 2 hours, on the war, on the Ukraine war, and why it is happening. And my view was that this war is happening, but it is a civilizational war. And actually, other people have mentioned the same way, that it is a civilization war. Only for them, when they are talking about war of civilization, they look at it from a different point of view. But from my point of view, it is a civilization war because it is a war. The Ukrainian war is a war which is heralding in, or which is ushering in, the end of the Western civilization. As it has been exploitative, it has been very murderous. Like we have mentioned, many people have been killed, numerous people have been killed across the globe. So it has been very unfortunate, and we can't say that it has been a very good civilization for the last 600 years, this European civilization, because of the death that has happened. Even though there has been technologies, these technologies still were there. In the other ages, there was some sort of technology which they came and they added and they contributed to it. But we think that it is not worth it, the exploitation of the earth that has gone on, and the destruction of the planet and the killing of numerous people across the globe. It is not worth it. So I want to thank you, those who have stuck with me since the beginning. My name is Kwame Gonza, and till we meet again, peace.